today we're going to be talking about some scalable vector graphics. Welcome to Getting to Green. My name is Kevin. Today we're going to be talking about some scalable vector graphics. We already use SVGs in our app for the icons, right? So we have, I think, two different spots right now that we have imported icons from, Heroicons. So, right now, if we wanted to reuse that icon, we'd have to completely duplicate that code, go to, Heroicons, copy all that code and pop it in somewhere. And there's no way to track down which one is which. We don't know what that icon really is. Let's take a look at the code really quick. So if I go to, to do title, we come down here, we have an SVG right here. I don't know what this is, right? It's just a bunch of stuff, but I'm pretty sure this is those three vertical dots, those vertical ellipses. And there's nothing here to say what that is, right? And if you follow all the way down, we actually have another SVG right here. And this one is a downward facing chevron, but there's no way to know that, right? If you didn't know what this was, looking at this code, it means nothing. So there's got to be a better way, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a component, and we're going to do that right now. So let's do that. In components, I'm going to create something called Inline Svg, and this isn't going to be a typical view component. This is going to be slightly different. This one's kind of cool. So we're just going to do a .ts. And while we're at it, might as well create our test for it. So inline svg.spec.ts. We're going to describe this. So describe inline svg. All right. So first thing is that so how do we want to interact with this, right? How are we going to use it and everything like that? So what I want to do is, I think I'll have a prop named name, right? So if I give it a name, I want it to figure out which icon I want it to use by that name. So I can say it can find the correct icon by name. Right. So I think I'll have the test. I need to have a, we'll say const wrapper equals, we're going to mount. We're going to use mount from view test tools. So we're going to import that. I'm going to say inline svg. And this isn't picking up inline svg yet. Let's see if we can import inline svg from inline svg. .ts. I don't know if that matters. Yeah, so this one in here, there's a couple of things I want to do. I'm going to say export. What are we going to do? Default. Define component. And I want to import that. So define component from view. And this is going to take, we have our props. So props, we're going to have a name. I'm going to make this an object because I want it to be required. So required true, and I want it to be a type of string. And this has to be capital string. This isn't a TypeScript-y thing yet. And all right, so we got our props. That's good so far. If I come in here now, it's just going to give me, there we go. Now it's picking everything up. Okay, so we want to pass it some props data, and we want to pass a name of, well, we don't have anything yet, but let's see, we had that vertical ellipses. How about we create that? Or how about the down chevron? And then we're just going to expect that the wrapper.html, handle HTML, includes And we don't really know what that whole SVG is going to be. Sorry, I keep screwing up the name. But we're going to test to make sure that at least some kind of SVG came in. So I just want to say like this, SVG. So as long as the HTML includes something like that, we're good to go. And we're going to save this, and let's run this. Let's go yarn test spec, and then I just want to run this one file. So resources, JS, components, tests, and inline SVG. All right, so you can see that we have, we have nothing includes SVG because there's nothing being rendered. So if we come back to our component here, yeah, it's not doing anything. So we're going to create a render function and just do that. And we need to return something. Return, and this is going to be an H function. And H comes from view. So if I say H, got view right there, and this is what's going to render out. We give it, the first thing is going to be the type of component we're creating, the type of HTML element. So I'm just going to make it a div. And here we can add everything that we need, all of our different props, like class. You could say SVG. And for the inner HTML, I can say new. Now we save it, and we come down here, run that again. Let's see, includes expected class SVG hello to include this. So we're actually rendering something. This is pretty cool. But we're not doing anything with our SVGs, and we don't have any SVGs. So why don't we start with that? So in the JS folder, let's create an SVG folder. Oh, something already exists with SVG. Oh, I did create it before. So we have a folder here for SVG. Let's go to title. This one is that bottom guy. This is the last part. This is the downward chevron. So I'm going to cut that out. Let's go into our SVG. We're going to create a new file, and we'll say chevron down, chevron-down.svg. Paste that in there. We'll format it a little nicer, and that is our SVG. Pretty cool. So how do we now get that item? That's a good question, right? So we need to render this out. We need to figure out what's in that folder. So let's grab everything from it. Let's say const files equals import.meta.blob. So we're going to pass it the actual directory that we want. So at SVG, and in there some wildcards and everything that is a .svg. That's everything we want. And there's a couple of other things we want to say with this. So with our glob, we can actually say we want to return these as raw data. And I want to eagerly load these. True. We can see here that TypeScript is giving us some errors here. Import meta isn't allowed with module. So what we can do to fix this, I think this is within our tsconfig. Let me just double check. So within this file, we have our vtest globals, but we also need vt/client. So if I save that and I come back here, the import meta is only when the module is this. So let's go back to our tsconfig. And we can also say module, and we'll do ES2020. All right, so that error goes away, so that's good. So now we know that we have the glob, and it gives you all of our TypeScript stuff. And we're just not using the files yet, so we need to actually resolve that. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to log out what the files are. I'll just say files. When I save this, I come down to this run, this should have given us some stuff, and we did. We got, yeah, that's the SVG right there. So we just have to return that, right? So in here, we could say files. Let's see what happens there. And yeah, it's saying, okay, the object doesn't include it, right? I mean, so this is, let's take a look at our actual, let's create a new thing here. Well, let's go take a look at the actual website. So yarn dev. All right, we'll do to-do.test. Okay, so first off, the to-do title, we didn't do anything there. So let's do inline SVG, give it a name, and we'll say, it doesn't matter, foobar. And inline SVG doesn't seem to be finding it. Oh, but it did get it. All right, great. So now, yeah, we're getting an object. And if we inspect in our console, we should have gotten the files here. And we're getting an object, and here is our key, and the value is the actual value we're looking for. So if I had tried to do, grab this, copy that, let's go to our inline SVG files, and this is the key, so we'll say this. Now, let's see what our, yeah, now everything is passing in our test, and look at that, we have our downward chevrons back. So we're actually grabbing that file. But this I don't want to have to remember all of this stuff. I want to say I want the chevron down. I want the vertical ellipses. I want whatever it is that we decide that we want. So what we can do is let's go back up to the files here. And over here we could say, let's just put this all into an object. Object.entries, into an array. And this is what that entries is. And then we can map over those. And in the map, I'm going to break it out into our key value pairs, which I'm going to say our path, and then our content. And I want to do some things to the path. So like we saw before, we have all of these different slashes and everything. So once we get into it, I don't really want to worry about it. So I'm going to say const name equals the path. I'm going to say replace. And we're going to do some regex here. I want to everything from the beginning, including everything to the last slash. And we're going to replace it with nothing. And I also want to replace anything with the, well, we'll do this also with regex. We'll say everything that is a .svg, as long as that's at the very end, not end. Okay, and then we're going to return name and content. So now we have an object with name of what the name we just gave it, plus all of that content. Save this. It's going to reformat for us. And now when we run over to our files here in the browser, we have an array, and we have content and the name chevron down. So we can actually find this directly. So instead of saying files, all of this, we can say files and this, this dot name. And since it's an array, actually, we got to do it a different way. So files dot find, and we're going to say the file where the file dot name is this dot name. And then we have to give it, then we're just going to get the content from it. Okay, and let's see what happens here. We're getting an error, content. Right, so let's see what we got here. Also, with this thing getting the little squiggly, forgot to mention this before. Here we can actually have a module resolution, and we're going to say node for this. Save that, and that fixes that view issue, and also the object entries. I don't know if that fixed what we have going on here. Let's refresh. And content. Yeah, we don't have anything reading the content. So let's just back that up. So our files are here, our name, chevron dash down. Oh, right. Because we actually gave it a bad name. So chevron dash down. Save that, and we come here, and we have an object. If we come back to our inline, we can say dot content. And now we refresh, and there it is, it's back. Great, so this shows us that there's a couple of things that we have left to do. We have to first off make sure that if we have an error, and like we don't get something or we pass the wrong name to it, we want it to console log something and fail gracefully, right? Instead of just breaking the entire app. So if we come back to our test, so we have this one is now should be working. Well, spelled correctly, chevron down, and now this passes. So that's another issue I do want to talk about. We might explore that. I might want to try and stub out the beta glob and see if we can just pass it some regular stuff so that way our test is really independent from our actual files, because right now it is very much dependent on what's going on inside of our files. So if we ever remove this chevron down and say down the line we don't need that anymore, and we delete that file, well, now our test doesn't pass, and that doesn't jive well, right? So, but right now let's get the what did I write for the other one? This is kind of nice. It fails if the given SVG is invalid. So what happens here? So now if I don't even need, well, let's just do this. Paste that in. I'm not expecting the wrapper to have anything. Actually, let's see. Not includes, but I want it to render, and this is going to be invalid. But mostly, I want to check if the console is getting what we need. So let's do we'll do a let here. Console warn stub, and in our before each, we'll say vi.spy, and this is going to be the console warn stub equals vi spy console and warn, and we're going to say we want to mock implementation, and then we'll just pass it a random function. All right, vi spy. Oh, spy on. There we go. We're just going to spy on that console and mock the implementation. And so now down here, we want to say we expect console warn stub dot to have been called. And up here, we expect it to not to have been called. Save this, see what we get. We got one passing, I'm assuming it's the first one, and the second one is failing because it can't read contents of something that doesn't exist. So we'll bring out here, we'll break all of this out. We'll say, so we'll say the const SVG equals files dot find. We're going to do exactly what we did below. File, the file dot name is this dot name. And if we don't have an SVG, or that SVG dot content doesn't exist, then I want to console.warn, and I'll just write a nice message. This dot name SVG does not exist. And I want these to be like, so it could show what it is that we actually are looking for. And like that. Otherwise, we just have all of this. And then we want to say return the internet HTML of svg.content. Let's see how this works. And then we're still getting an error. All right, up. And we can return here. Save it. And there we go. Now we got 2 passing tests. So that means if we go back to our to-do title and we give this just chevron, which doesn't exist, come back to our files here. We'll rerun this. Might not. Let's cancel this. Rerun dev. And come back. Refresh. And it's not there, but the entire app didn't fail, which is nice. It says, then chevron SVG does not exist. I know that's a little small on your end, but inline SVG, the whatever SVG does not exist. So that is all well and good. So great. So now we just have to kind of start putting in our files. So if we go back to our to-do title, we had an SVG all the way up here. And this is the ellipses. So if I'm going to copy this and go into our SVGs, and this is well, actually, let's go to Heroicons, see what they say. Vertical. So we have right here ellipses vertical. Just going to copy this and change the name of it. .svg. And in there, we can actually just grab the SVG directly, save it, and now we have that. So now we can go to title, and let's archive. We want right here. Inline SVG. Name equals, and I want ellipses vertical. All right, go back to our app, reload it, and it's still there. That's great. Come back down here and fix this one. Okay, cool. Now we got both of our stuff working the way that we want. And if we inspect it, we do actually have the SVG within here. So we can actually change things on here. So if we wanted to, we can make the text or fill color, make it blue, right? We can actually change different aspects of what we're looking at. So we can edit the SVG. That's why we're doing it with the SVG instead of an image tag, because you could have an image and source an SVG and it'll bring it in perfectly fine, but you can't edit anything in it. So we want to be able to change the color of it, the fill, whatever we want to do within our app. So that's great. Now we have all of that. What else do we want? Well, one of the big things is we could see that every time I misspell something, we're going to have that warning and we're not going to display anything. And it's, you know, yeah, you could go over here and you could say, oh, this is the name of it, yada, yada, yada. But we have TypeScript. Why not leverage that TypeScript stuff, right? Come back over to Inline SVG, get rid of this console. Let's do a type of SVG name. And, well, I just want to have the different names. So we have chevron down, or ellipsis vertical, and we want to use that in here. So this one is the type of string, but we can actually do some cool stuff. So we can say as prop type, that's from view, and we're going to send it in a SVG name. So now we have that as the type string there. If we come back to do title, and I get rid of that, we can see we get an error. Chevron DAO is not assignable to SVG name. Did you mean chevron down? Yeah. So we have some really cool automatically handled stuff, some type hinting and everything. So we can actually just have what we wanted to do. So that's nice. But let's say let's go back to the app. We have this archive thing, and I want to add an icon there. So let's go over to oh, I just had it open. Row icons. Let's say archive. We have this archive box. Copy that. Let's go into our SVGs. Say archive-box.svg. Paste that in there. Save. And go to title. And we had the archive right here. And I want to say inline Svg. And we need the name. And I want to say, well, that's the archive box. But archive box doesn't exist on there. We can add it in ourselves manually, but come on, we're devs. Any kind of mild inconvenience will not be tolerated. So what are we going to do? Well, we could create a new type, which I want, of all the different names of everything in here. So why don't we do something kind of fun? Let's get out of all of this. We have this folder right here I created. You won't have this. I created this. Create a new folder called scripts. And in here, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to make a node file. We're going to call it update svg names.ts. So in here, we're gonna be working with the file system. So we got to bring it in, and we're not going to be able to use import because we're outside of our resources and everything, and it doesn't really matter. This isn't something that's running within our app. This is something that we're using locally for ourselves, so we don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to say we're going to use require. So const file system equals require fs. Yeah, it's going to throw some errors. Who cares? Const file names. And we're going to say we want the file system to read, dir, and sync. We want it to be synchronously. We're going to say dir name plus. And we're going to say we're going to get out of this because we're in scripts. We're going to get out one. We're going to go to resources, JS, and we have the SVG and everything in there. And then what I want to do is I want to map every file that I have in there. And because it's going to grab all those names, including the SVG. I just want to get rid of that SVG piece, right? So we're going to turn. I just want to say file.replace, and we'll do SVG $, and we want to just get rid of it, right? So that's good. Let's end it there. And now I just want to write to our system. So fs.write file. And we're going to also give it the dir name that we want it to go to. Plus, break out from this one, resources, JS, and types. We have that folder in there. And I'm going to name this, you have to name this here, svg types.d.ts. And in that file, I want it to read export type svg names, and I'm going to give it all of those file names. And there's a last bit, which is if there's an error. So there's a function here, and if we experience an error, we want to handle that error. So we're just going to say if there is an error, we want to, well, here. We're going to console.error, error. Save that. Formats it all nicely for us. And now, we create a new window here. We're going to say node scripts and then update. We're just going to run that, see what happens, and everything seemed to work just fine. If we come into our resources, JS types, we have this new file here for us. And look at that, we have some things, but yeah, they're not completely right. So let's go fix that. Let's go back to update our SVG names. So we're returning the file replace. What we want is, we want to say that they're in a, they got quotes around them. So we can do this. So now they have quotes. If I save that, run that function again, go back to SVG types, we do have those quotes, but it's doing some weird stuff. Still, we want this to be like this, where each of them is separated by a pipe. Back to do update. And after all of this, since we have an array, might as well join them. And let's give them a space and hit all the wrong keys at the same time. Give it a pipe and run that again. Whoops. Let's close it. Don't save it. Come back. Now you can see everything is correct. If I save this, it updates it to having a single quote. We can actually, well, might as well keep it consistent. Come back up here. Single quote. Single quote. Save that. Run that again. Come back here. And it's all looking really nice. It does add a thing at the end. We could do that too, but not really that big of a deal. So now we have access to that. Let's go to our inline SVG. And instead of bringing it here, we're exporting it. So names from the types. So now we have all of that. We can go to our to-do title, and we now have archive boxes working. So if I clear this out, I come down here, archive box. That's awesome. Let's try something else. Let's go to, let's see what else we have. Let's do a plus. A plus circle. I'm going to copy that SVG and come down to our SVGs, create a new file, plus dash circle dot SVG, paste that in, run this, come back to our title, and now we could say plus circle. It's right there. I can go into our app here, and there's our plus circle. It's not totally looking right, but it's there, right? So that's great. Well, let's first off fix how that looks. I want that to be the archive thing anyway. So archive box. That's right. So come back here, refresh. We have that. Let's inspect this. We have, I think this guy right here is the outlier. We want that to be full. Display flex. There we go. Archive. So in here, yeah. So the full, we want to just say flex. Perfect. And I think that's pretty much it. It looked like it was centered, but we'll work on that later. So if I refresh this, all right, we got that. I'd like to have some space on here. This is something else that's pretty cool. So now we have the name. We could say class. We're going to say MR2. So margin right 2. Save that. Come back over here, and we have that margin right there. It's made right on the SVG itself. Class. Not that. Here. So there's our class. We have that SVG MR2. Inline SVG right? We pass this class in right here, so we're just appending to that. So the SVG will always be there. We can call this probably something else, inline -svg, just to make sure that we know exactly what that is. Don't really need it, but it's there. Inspect this, and there it is, the inline SVG margin right too. We could say in the to-do title, we could say, why don't we make text yellow 400. Let's see if that does anything for us. Look at that. How nice is that? So now we have the SVGs working, and we have a cool little script that's going to help us keep everything up and going. But you know, typing this and remembering that, not really that much fun. So let's go to our package. Let's add a new script. We'll say SVG, and this is just going to run node, and it's going to be scripts/update svg names.ts. So I can save that. Now I can write yarn svg, and it did the same exact thing. It updated everything right into here. Perfect. We can even, since we're running this and we want to make sure that we're always have this thing up to date, every time we run this, we could say yarn svg and vt. Come back to where we're running here. This is that. We'll get this one. This is running the dev. So now if we do yarn dev, now we're running the SVG. We just saw that it runs the scripts, and everything is running again. So now we don't have to worry about our SVGs, and we have everything is nicely typed. Going to run right to it, and I think that's awesome. All right. So another thing that I wanted to talk about was since we're going to be using this inline SVG like throughout our app, maybe we can make this a global component, so we don't have to worry about importing it every time. So if you look here, yeah, we're importing it here, and if we decide to bring it into another component somewhere else down the line, we have to import it again. This is one of those things that, since it's going to be in everything, might as well be available everywhere. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's remove it from here, and if we come down to the bottom, it's purple because it doesn't know what it is. If we go back to our app.ts, we can actually use it right here. So app.component, we're going to say, we're going to give it the text name. So inline SVG. This could be different from what your actual component's called. This is just how you're going to use it within your app. So if I wanted to have it be called icon or whatever. But then you're going to actually give it the real component that you want, which is inline SVG. And that gets pulled in for us right here. And now this is globally working for us. So if I save this, it still is in purple. If you come down here, we refresh our app, everything's still working. So they're all still there. However, we lose a couple of things. So if I remove this, we don't know that the name is required. It just thinks that it's a string. So that feels kind of weird, right? But if we come into our JS, and we could create just a new file called, what did I name that file? Sorry, right in JS, a new file called global components.d.ts. And this is just going to kind of set up all of the global components for us. We just need this so that Vue understands what it is we're trying to use. We're going to declare this. So declare module, and this is going to be at Vue/runtime core. And in here, we're going to export our interface global components. So within here, you can have as many global components as you want. They would be all declared right inside here. So the inline SVG is going to be the type of inline SVG. And we're going to import that, save this, come back to the do title. This is now orange again, so the color changed. Name now recognizes that it's needs to be the SVG names, so we get everything that we had before back. So all of our type hinting is right here, all of our auto completion is back, and this one was the ellipsis vertical. Save that, go back to our app, refresh, everything works exactly the same. And if we look for this in our whole app, let's see, we have the app, okay, global components, to-do title, it's just those, and everything is here. I don't think we need it in our tests anymore. Let's see if that, in the tests, we still need it. So that's just tests, but now we have it as a global component. All right, and there you have it. We have some inline SVGs. We have a couple of tests to back it up. And we have a little bit of type scripting to help with some type hinting, and we can get the actual name of the SVG directly from the folder structure with some nifty little node. And yeah, that's going to be it for today. If you learned something new, if you liked the video, leave a thumbs up. If you want to leave a comment. If you know how to mock out that import meta glob thing, let me know in the comments, because I just looked it up and I couldn't figure it out. I don't know if there's a way to maybe mock the entire folder structure, but I don't like having the tests really reflect directly what's in the folder structure of our directories, so that might be nice. And if you want to subscribe, hit that bell, get notified every random time I decide to upload a video. Yeah. All right, with that, I guess I will see you next time. Cheers.